Hello, it's James Arter here. I hope you're doing really well. So, lots of people have been asking me about my mixing template, so I thought I'd do a video on that. Not only to take you through what I do, but also why I do it and why I think you should have a mixing template as well. Stick around, I'll show you what I do. As usual, if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up. Also, if you want to subscribe to the channel, you can hit all the necessary things down there. And if you want to sign up to my mailing list, I'll send you some free things that you can use in your mixes. Now, firstly, the all-important why. Why do we use a mixing template? Surely, if you're using a mixing template, then it means that every time you do a mix, it's going to sound exactly the same, and you're not going to have any character in any mix you do. That's wrong. The point of using a mixing template is that you have all of your tools, you have all of your sounds ready to go, so you can make quick decisions and you can just move forward with the mix. If you're painting a picture and you've set up your canvas, you're not going to be just standing there staring at it, imagining and waiting for the paint to appear. Maybe you will, I don't know, maybe you're way more skilled than me and you can just do everything with your mind, in which case you don't need to be watching these videos. But what you would do as a painter is you'd have all of your palette of colours ready to go. So then you can choose what you're going to use to paint. You can mix whatever you want and throw it on the canvas. Well, it's the same thing. You need to be ready with your tools. You can't get halfway through it and then realize you don't have red. So you're going to have to go back and grab red. So that's the point. You have everything ready at your fingertips. All of the great mixing engineers do it. Chris Lord-Alge, Michael Brower, Andrew Sheps, Andy Wallace. And yes, some of those guys are not mixing in the box. Some of them are mixing on a massive console with all of their outboard gear. But the point is, they have everything set up and ready to go. They still have their reverbs and delays, their main go-tos. They're already prepared. They're already wired up to the desk in the same send that they always have it in. They know exactly where things are, so they can grab it immediately. They're not going to go, I need an eighth note delay. Okay, I'm just going to go over there, I'm just going to plug it back in, and I'm just going to set it all up. I'm going to make sure it sounds all right, and then I'm going to put it into the desk. No, they're not going to do that. They just want to turn a knob and it appears. So that's the point of a mixing template. So I'm going to take you through mine, and as you'll notice, and I'll tell you as I'm going along, I've basically stolen all of these ideas of various mixing engineers. Some of them I take the ideas and I'm using them. Some of them I take them and I've changed them a little bit. I've manipulated them to serve my purpose more. And then there's some things in there which are my ideas too. But essentially, my mixing template is an amalgamation of lots of different ideas. So I'm going to run through what I have, but I'm not going to show you absolutely everything, how to set them up. I'm just going to give you the ideas so you can see what processes and what effects are useful to have there. So by all means, steal all of my ideas and just set it up exactly the same way. These ideas, as I've said, are just stolen from other people who are stolen from other people, blah, 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 blah. So, doesn't matter. Whatever works for you, it's more about the why. That's the more important thing here. So, let's dive in and let's just start looking at what I have set up. Okay, so I'm going to go bit by bit, but I'm going to try and go fairly quickly and then show you the odd example as I go. I'm not going to take you through each process because actually some of them already have their own video, so I'll link those when it's appropriate. But when I do a mix, firstly we can just maybe imagine I've got all of the audio in there, but I've taken them out for now just so you can see exactly what I'm actually bringing in. I'll have all of the audio in there, and then I bring in my mixing template, and this, what you see on the screen, is exactly what I use. So all of these things there, as you can see, they're all auxiliary buses. So everything that I have in general is parallel processing. So that's why it's so easy to bring in a mixing template, because you're just dipping into these different effects as and when you need them. So I'll just go down, look at all that I've got. Actually, it's not a great deal, but it's a bunch. Now, the whole thing does start with the mix bus, and I've done another video on that, so go and check that out as well. But I won't go into that for just now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few things which are kind of general processes, and then I'll show you a few things that are specific to certain instruments, so namely drums, bass, guitar, vocals. Now, in general, as a all-purpose use, I always have a quarter note delay, an eighth note delay, and then a room reverb and a plate reverb. These are just here for all-purpose use. Anything that can be used in them. I'm also doing a little bit of a CLA trick where with these delays, I actually have them also going into a reverb. It's not going hard into a reverb. I have them taken from a send. So there's a send from the delay which goes into the reverb as opposed to going directly into the reverb. But this is just to give those delays just a little bit more space, just to take the edge off them a little bit, so make them a little bit more natural sounding. So that's literally just going into a fairly simple, a medium-sized room. Now next I've got a microshift, which is an emulation of the Eventide processor, and it's just a stripped down version of it, but essentially it's a stereo processor. Either side is detuned just a little bit, so you can use that just for a little bit of stereo width here and there. I generally just use that on the vocals, but it's there for anyone who wants to use it. Now next up as a main process is the Sheps named rear bus. Now I actually don't use this in the same way that I used to. So his process with the rear bus is that he has a main parallel compressor that allows all of the instruments to go to it. So not drums, not vocals, but all of the other instruments, sometimes the bass, but mostly not. And it means that when those instruments are using it all together, it essentially kind of helps to glue them together. And for example, if one of the instruments, say it's a guitar, is particularly loud, then that's going to take over the compressor a little bit, and therefore it's going to kind of push the other instruments away almost. It just helps them to all kind of sit together in harmony. Now, as I've said, as time has gone on, I don't really use this as much. In fact, I hardly use it. What I do now is I just leave it there as a parallel compressor that I can dip into if I feel like an instrument just needs a little bit of extra, but I don't use it in the same way that he uses it. So this is like an all-purpose parallel compressor. And then I've got similar sort of thing, but this one is a parallel compressor for all of the backing vocals, so they'll dip into that when they need it. And that is basically all I have for the general processing. I know that there was backing vocals in there as well, but that's my general processing. So now let's go over to the drums. Now, as you'll see, there's quite a few things in here. This goes up to this one here. So all of those are what I use for my drum processing. It's not that I'll necessarily be using everything at the same time, but it's all there ready to go. And in fact, I am using a whole bunch of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in the drums. Actually, I'm going to bring in everything. These are my drums here. And then at the end, this is where I've got all of my drum processing. So like I said, everything I have here is parallel processing. And a bunch of these are things that, again, I've totally stolen off Andrew Sheps. But you know what? He knows exactly what he's doing, and it really does work. So very quickly, I've got a Fairchild 670, not doing very much. In general, it's probably compressing up to 1 dB. And I use that for kick, snare, and toms. I don't use it on any sort of cymbals. I've got the old kick and snare parallel compression. Fairly simple. Slowest attack, fastest release. And in fact, I'm using the anniversary edition of this mighty 1176 compressor, so you can get the slightly slower attack than the usual models. 2-to-1 ratio, and again, it's not going to be doing very much. It's probably doing about 3 to 5 dB of gain reduction, just giving it that lovely vibe. And that's, as I said, that's doing the kick and the snare. Sometimes I change it out, and this is the first part that is quite important. As you can see, I've got that compressor on the channel, but also I've got this other one which is hidden, and it's a DBX. So the DBX is essentially doing the same thing, but it's just a slightly different flavor. So if I feel that the 1176 isn't cutting it, I'll go to a DBX. 9 times out of 10, I like the 1176. It just works. I love the sound of it, and I use that. But I like to have things set up just in case I want to switch them out. And the main thing is they're there ready to go. I don't have to go and find a plugin, add it in, and reset it up. Yeah, okay, you could say that doesn't take a very long time, but it does when you're in the middle of a mix and you don't want to be fannying about. That's the main thing here. You just want to switch things on or switch them off, and that's it. You don't want to do anything else. So more parallel processing. I've got this one here, which is what I like to call the drum filth. Now, all it is it's a UAD plugin here, which is a precision maximizer. So it's essentially adding some dirt, and it's adding a kind of form of limiting or compression. As you can see, I've absolutely smashed it on here, and I just dip a little bit of this into, again, the kick, the snare, and the toms. Now, if you actually see this working, you won't see that it's peaking. Even though I've smashed these up, nothing is ever going to be in a red, and you need to make sure that that is the case in general. I'm just doing that to get the sound of it and to get a little bit more level. And now from that, I've actually taken a send to the crusher over here, which is, as I said, I've stolen things from everybody here. So this one is stolen from Chris Lord Algae. So we've got the FG Bomber, which is essentially like a transient shaper, really. So it's just giving it a little bit of extra punch, a little bit of extra attack, a little bit of high, a little bit of low, and then a little bit of compression at the end. So that's taking the send over there, and it's essentially taking my drum filth and it's giving it a little bit more punch. Next up, we've got a Devil Lock, which is, as you can imagine, yet more distortion, yet more saturation. I've done a whole video about saturation, so I'll put a link into that and you can go and check it out. But this is basically adding some dirt and a little bit of compression, and I tend to just use this on the snare. So if the snare needs a little bit more vibe, this is where I'll bring it in. And then in addition to that, I've got two Pultecs set up. One of them for the kick, one of them for the snare, doing the old famous Pultec trick, which is a boost and a cut of whatever frequency you want, really. But in terms of the kick, it's about 60 hertz, and on a snare, it's about 100 hertz. Again, I've done a video about that, so I'll link this somewhere here and you can go and have a look. We'll have a little listen to all of these in just a second, but I'm just showing you what I've got. I've also got a reverb, which I have set up just for the toms, and it's a fairly short room, just to give them a little bit more boom, a little bit more energy around them. And then more recently, I've had this set up, and it's an overall reverb that I use for the drums, and it's something that I'll only put on the rooms, and sometimes the triggers as well, like the samples that I use on the snare, for example. As you can see, this is literally just some reverb, no delay, just some reverb going on there, using CLA's new plugin Epic, which is exactly Epic. And you know what? I've done a video all about that, so I'll do a link somewhere here. You can go and have a look. It's a brilliant plugin. I highly suggest you check it out. And in fact, just since we're talking about mixing templates, this is a really prime example of what he would do. So it's essentially what I'm already doing at the end of my session there, is he'll have set up multiple reverbs, multiple delays. So you've got 4 delays here and 4 reverbs, all doing different things. That's what, and they're generally what he'll have set up in his session. So like I said, go and check out that video and you hear a little bit more about it, but it's all tied into the same thing. So, okay, I've got one more parallel process in here, which is just something I call drum bus, which is, again, just a little bit of saturation. And this one is actually very mild. And as it stands, I don't really use this one very much. I just use it every now and again. And it's probably going to be taken out of my template fairly soon because I've not used it for quite some time. But as it stands, it's just there if I need it. It's another color that I can use in case I want to give the overheads just a little bit more vibe in this section, for example, and take it out after that. That's the point of having different things in there. Well, as I said, chances are that's going to be leaving my template soon, and maybe something else will get replaced, so that this template does get updated every few months probably. Now, lastly, all of those things that I've got, all that parallel processing comes into the drum bus, and all of the drums themselves, even if they're going, firstly, they'll go into their own buses. So for example, the kicks go into a kick, the snares go into a snare, toms go into tom, and so on and so forth. They then come into this drum bus. So everything drum wise comes into the drum bus before it goes to the mix bus. And this is just my drum bus glue. This is an amazing plugin. It's probably my favorite thing to have on the drum bus ever, and it's not doing an awful lot. It will only be compressing between 1 and 2 dB. That's pretty much it. But because it's kind of it's a built-in tape saturator as well, it gives that little bit of vibe, a little bit of energy. As you're getting from here, I do like saturation. I like to just have that vibe ready to go. So that's doing just a little bit. It helps to kind of control everything a little. And just before that, now I wouldn't usually have this on with the Fatso because the Fatso is a tape saturation already. So I don't really need this, but it was still in there from my previous template because I wasn't using the Fatso before. I was using the Shadow Hills compressor instead, and that one was a little bit cleaner. But for this particular song, it worked to have both. So I left both in. And that's the point. I'll leave this in a template. I might even just bypass it to start off with. But then if it turns out that it's needing it, then I'll enable it. And there you go. It's all set up with simple settings, just ready to go. I don't have to go and find it. That's the main point here. If something doesn't work, you just take it out and you move on. Don't overthink it. Just change what you're doing. Try a different color. If that one isn't working, try a different color. Simple. Now let's just have a quick listen to the drums. And what I might do is take out some of that processing just so you can hear a little bit of what it's doing. What I'm going to do is I'll leave the main drum bus on there because that's kind of a basic. I'd say most people just have their drums going into a drum bus. There's nothing really new there. Okay, so we're going to go from here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some of the parallel processing just so you can hear a little bit of what it's doing. You know, it's just got a little bit more low end and a kick there. Right, reverb, that's always good. Fantastic. One of the main ones I'd say is going to be this kick snare crush. Okay, we'll start to bring in some of the other ones. We've got the 670 now. You can see a few things are just starting to come to life just that little bit more. Let's try the drum filth because that does some great things. And then finally, these two pull techs that I've got on the kick and snare. And a little bit of double lock. This is actually very, very subtle in there. You might not hear it in the entirety of the mix. That's actually doing just a very small amount, but you can really smash it if you want. So, for example, we've just got it on the snare over here, devil lock. See, it's literally just touching in a tiny little bit of it there, but you could go crazy if you want. Exactly. See, I just liked it just to give it a little bit of energy in there. So just very quickly, I'm going to take those all off and bring them all in, and you'll just hear what they're doing. As I said, it's all fairly subtle, but it all adds up. It all compounds into a more focused and just better sound. And there you go. That is the drums. Next up, bass. What is the bass doing? I've got a few little things going on here. In general, I always have a bass group set up, which I'll have some plugins on, but I don't always use the same settings. It totally depends on the song, really. This is a bass group. It's usually got an API on there, just smashing a little bit of the high mids. I've also got a Kramer EQ, which is randomly having a little bit of 400 hertz. That doesn't work in every song, but it did work in this one. And a little bit of compression from the good old distressor. So this is taking all of what the bass channels would be, whether it be a DI and an amplifier, or sometimes a DI amp and then like a dirty pedal like a Sounds amp or something. And most of the time I'll have them all going into this group. So these are the things that I'm bringing in. And then from that group, it's already got parallel compression set up, ready to go. Again, 1176, one of the best compressors known to man. So that's doing its general thing. Also, I've got my bass dirt set up It's the old favorite, just a Sans amp, just adding some dirt, adding some drive. And I won't always use this as it stood for this particular song. One of the channels already had a load of dirt in it, so I didn't need to add it. And then lastly, we've got the bass chorus. It's the old Andy Wallace bass technique. And funnily enough, I've done a video on that, so I'll put a link somewhere here. You can go and have a look. But let's just see a little bit about what that's doing. That's everything. Now let's take out the parallel processing. Beautiful. So that's my bass, and that's not too many things I've got going on there. Next up, guitars. Now there's a few things that I do have for my guitars. Again, I don't use them all the time, especially with heavy guitars. You don't need a lot going on. Most of the time you don't need parallel compression, but for some of them, if I fancy it, then I'll dip into the rear bus, the one that I told you about earlier. The other processing that I have are a couple of different things. One of them, Guitar Spice. This is something that I ripped off from CLA. This is a parallel thing that he has set up on his desk, which tends to be a little bit of 8K, a little bit, but a little less of around 1K, and then just a little bump at around 200 hertz as well. I'll show you what that does in just a second. But then I've also got the old Pultec trick going on, doing a boost and a cut at 100 hertz. I'll use these if I need them. Again, I'll show you that in a second. And then lastly, I've got these couple of things here. I've got a spring reverb set up, one that's directly going to the left, one that's directly going to the right. And the reason I have this is mainly if there's a guitar only on one side. Sometimes when it's just there on its own and there's nothing else happening, it can feel a little bit alien and it can make your ears just go a little bit funny. So if I have something on the right, for example, I'll send a little bit of spring reverb to the left. And firstly, it makes things sound a little bit more comfortable, it makes things sound a little bit more natural, but also it adds width, because then you have context of that sound, because you're hearing I kind of like the rest of the sound on the other side, so you can actually hear how wide it is. It just makes it sound bigger. So I have those set up mainly for those situations. And the other one is the old faithful chorus pedal, the CE one. Not doing a whole lot, not too much intensity or depth and whatnot in here, but that's just set up for when a guitar needs a little extra something. 9 times out of 10, I'll use that on a solo because it's stereo, so it just helps to spread out that solo part a little bit, give it a little bit more width, give it a little bit more presence in the mix. So let's just hear a couple of those in context. So I'll show you first the Guitar Spice, and then I'll show you the Pultec, with and without the spice. As you can see, it definitely brings up the high end. And now if we try the Pultec, this is of course going to be centered around the lows. And then a little bit together. Let's try that in a mix just so you get a bit of an idea. Great. So as you can hear, it's adding some more loads, adding some more highs, and just general more vibe. Okay, and lastly, but by no means least, is the vocals. It's a whole bunch of stuff, and I've stolen things off different people. So let's start with this one. So this is pretty standard, parallel compression, all buttons in, smashed in 1176 with a slow attack, fast release. Pretty standard, lots of people do it. The main ones that I usually have in here in terms of reverbs and delays are actually just some delays. So if I need reverb, then I'll use the reverb that I already have set up. But my delays, I've got a vocal slap, so that's generally a 16th note, nice and quick. And then this one, which I call the Vance delay. This is basically an idea that I stole from Vance Powell. He does some great mixes and he's got some really, really cool ideas. And it's nothing special. It's something that lots of people do, but essentially it's the reverb goes into this. It's a stereo channel, but from there it goes into 2 mono channels set up with these settings, as you can see. So they're slightly different. One's a little bit faster, one's a little bit slower than the other. The idea is it's meant to be more of a tape delay. So I'm rolling off the high end. I've got it set on this wonderful plugin, the Echo Boy Junior. Got it set up on cheap tape, so it's already making it sound old and retro. And then just additionally, before it even goes into it, I'm rolling off some of the high end on the EQ as well. It's a really, really handy delay to have, so I highly recommend setting up something like that. But like I said, the main thing here is about having a few different tools at your disposal. These are ones that I've found really useful to me. You might have some slightly different ones set up. Now, of course, as I said before, you've got the original ones that I had, the standard quarter note and eighth note delays and the reverbs. They're already there ready for a session so I if my vocal wants to use that, it will use that. But these are just some things that I have specific to the vocals. Now, another couple of things, these are things I totally stolen from Andrew Sheps. I'd highly recommend going to watch his pure mix video. I think it was on a Ziggy Marley song. So he takes you through his mixing template and you'll see these things some of these things I've just totally stolen from him. So this is something that I'll use a little bit of in each mix. We've got what I call a vocal extra, which is a Pultec going into an LA2A going into another Pultec, and it's a wonderful little trick that he's got going on, which is taking away some 100, boosting some 8K, and then doing the opposite, so boosting 100, taking away some 8K. So it's essentially that Pultec trick that we've been using on some of the other things, like with the kick and the snare and the guitar from earlier, but just doing it with frequencies which are relevant to vocals. So it just helps them pop a little bit more. And then I've also got an exciter on there, which would essentially be like the Aphex Aural exciter. It's kind of like that. So I've just got a Pro Tools enhancer in there, and I've also got the old Slate Digital Revival, because that just adds some wonderful things. So that's another color that I've got to mix in. Last but not least, I've got the vocal filth. You're getting a theme here. I like saturation, I like dirt, I like to add it in as much as I can, and this is what I'll generally use a little bit of throughout the song on a vocal, but I use this mainly in a chorus or in a big section where I don't necessarily want to raise the volume of the vocal, but I just want it to just cut through just a little bit more. So I'll just add a little bit of this dirt in here, and it can help to bring it a little bit more forward. So great for bigger choruses, or great for just parts where it just needs a little bit of extra help. So to start off with, I'm de-essing it just to get it nice and clean, and just to ensure that there's not too many frequencies which are gonna make it pop out in an angry way. And then going into a distressor, but it's not doing too much, and I've got it on the third distortion setting, so I'm just trying to get the saturation from it into an LA2A, medium attack, medium release, all buttons in, but again not doing very much in gain reduction. I'm just trying to get the filth, and then another de-esser at the end to try and clean it up. So if we just have a very quick listen to that, I'll show you a little bit about what they're doing. But before I show you, actually, there's one more thing which is quite important. On these delays that I have set up, the other thing that I have set on each one just before it hits a delay is a compressor set with a sidechain coming from the vocal. So I've done another video on this actually, so I'll do another link to that. But essentially, what makes these more vocal specific is because it's attached to the vocal there, it means that every time the vocal is singing, it will back off the effect just a little bit, and then when the vocal stops, then you hear the effect. So it cleans it up and really just makes the vocal just sound that much clearer, just so you can get the vibe of the effect, but it's not going to be clouding the mix, especially with delays when you've got things popping all over the place. So I've done that with all of the delays that I've got on here. So on the slap, on the Vance delay, and I've also got one set up on this new CLA Epic reverb that I'm using. So let's just have a quick listen to a couple of those. That's I'm going to take everything off. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude, and a bit of filth. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. Now let's bring in a little bit extra. So we've got the exciter, the vocal extra. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. And a little bit of the micro shift. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. That's actually very subtle effects. You only got it in a bit there. If I just give you a bit of an exaggeration of it. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. Maybe this is what you came for now. So you can hear that's just doing a little bit in there. And then finally these delays that I've got set up. So the advanced delay, the tape delay is probably one of my favorites and I use quite a lot. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. Maybe this is what you came for now. And master denial, a grateful substitute. Make weakness your virtue now. Lovely jubbly. I wasn't using the vocal slap on this particular song, but I might as well show you what it's doing. If you're still with me, are you still with me? I know it's a little bit of a long one, but we're nearly there, I promise. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. Maybe this is what you came for now. And master denial, a grateful substitute. Make weakness your virtue now. There you go. So as it happens, I was actually using the CLA Epic in this song, which is why I didn't have the other one set up originally. So see what that's doing. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. Maybe this is what you came for now. And master denial, a grateful substitute. Make weakness your virtue now. So you can see that's doing essentially all of what those other delays were doing, but all in one. So really handy. That's why I like it so much. I actually end up using that as some of my main processing, but then automate some of the settings within that plugin itself. So it's really super handy. I highly recommend it. But then if you need to add more of these processes, you can really easily. So just lastly on this, like I've got the vocal filth. This is a verse, so I'm not using too much of it. But in a chorus, or like I said, if there's a little bit where I just need a little bit more flavor, a little for it to poke through a bit more, then I add it in. So I'm going to bring it in just so you can hear it. Go with your instincts, a hopeless attitude. Maybe this is what you came for now. And master denial, a grateful substitute. Make weakness your virtue now. So you can see, you can actually get a lot more level, a lot more energy and power out of that if you need it. But just having a little bit at your disposal is really useful. And there you go. So that is my mixing template. And more importantly, why I think you should have one too. So just to reiterate, the point of having it is so you've got all those colors. So you've got the sounds, you've got the palette ready to go. If you get to a next section, you find out that you need a reverb, you need a delay. You don't have to spend time going to find the exact one you need. You try those that you have set up, because the idea is that you have a few different types already. So you've got a short delay, you've got a long delay, you've got a short reverb, you've got a big reverb, have a few different things there. See what works for you. If they're all there, you might find that actually you want to have a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay, but you didn't realize that at the time. So you might not consciously go to choose a reverb and a delay at the same time, but if they're set up ready to go, then it's easy to just throw up a fader and see if it works. If it doesn't, you move on. And that's the main thing here. If something doesn't work, you try something else, you move on. Doesn't mean that you can't insert a specific reverb, delay, all this, other parallel processing into the mix. Of course, every mix is going to be a little bit different. But if you've got things there ready to play with already, straight from the beginning, then you're going to be able to make faster decisions and just stay connected to the mix. So I hope that's been of use. What do you use in your mixing template? Maybe you can leave some comments below and we can get talking about it. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.